And on the front of the cathedral, the families had hung a banner that said, "How can we worship a homeless man on Sunday and ignore a homeless man on Monday?" The families were brilliant. They held a press conference and they said, "We mean no disrespect to the church or the archdiocese officials, but we have no place to go. And we talked to your boss, the Lord Almighty, and God said we can stay. God said that true religion is caring for the widows and the orphans in their distress and keeping ourselves from being corrupted by the world." So they stayed, and that was what sparked our little community on the north side of Philly. And we've been leaning in to those relationships for the last 20 years. We have a lot of friends that are still struggling with homelessness and struggling in different ways. And one of the things that we began to see in our city was that Philadelphia began to pass some really terrible laws that specifically targeted folks who were homeless. The city passed laws that made it illegal to sleep in public places, illegal to ask for spare change. One of the final laws Philly passed was a feeding ordinance, making it illegal to share food in downtown Philadelphia. And there comes that moment, Brother Greg, right, where we say, we got to obey God, right? So we said, we want humility, we want the right spirit, but we need to challenge these laws that stand in the way of loving our neighbors. So we decided we'd have a worship service. We brought our guitars and our drums, and we worshiped Jesus. And then we had some pastors that wanted to serve communion, which was tricky, right? Because you couldn't feed people. But we said, this ain't food, this is the body and blood. This is a sacrament, right? So we shared the food, and then, the cops were all around. They're like, I can't arrest people for having communion, In fact, I need to take communion, I think, And then right after that, we kept breaking the bread by bringing in some pizzas and stuff, And we kept the party going. We slept in the park. And then we did that night after night. And one night, about 100 of us were there, and the police were ordered to arrest us. So they surrounded the park. They came in. They put all of us in handcuffs. They took us to jail, and we had all kinds of charges. And we went to trial. And when we went to trial, I had a shirt on that said, "Jesus was homeless." And the first thing the judge does, he goes, "Come here. Jesus was homeless." I didn't know that. I said, "Yeah, Your Honor, in the scripture, Jesus said, foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head." That's why it's good to know your scripture, And then the judge said, "You guys might stand a chance." So we went to trial, and we decided, we needed a spokesperson. And rather than our big lawyers, we wanted someone who had lived the struggle to represent us. So our brother, Alfonso, he had lived a lot of his life on the street, and he knew the struggle well, and he agreed. We all knew him as Fonz because he was smooth. We're like, he's going to be perfect, So we're praying for him, And there's that scripture that says, when they drag you before the courts, don't worry about what you're going to say. The Spirit's going to give you the word. So we're praying for him. Fonzo stands up, and he goes, "Your Honor, on behalf of the whole group, I'd like to say we believe these laws are evil and wrong, and we rest our case." Boom, right? All right. What he said, And then the district attorney was not amused. She was throwing the book at us. She wanted us to go. She wanted us to actually serve jail time and pay thousands of dollars worth of fines. And this was a kicker. She wanted us to have hours and hours of mandatory court-sanctioned community service. No, not that. Right? We argue our case, and in the middle of the court trial, the judge says, "Listen to me. You don't need to convince me that they were breaking the law. It's very clear to me that they were breaking the law. What's in question is the law. If we hadn't had people who break the bad laws, we wouldn't have the freedom we have. That's what this country's built on, from the Boston Tea Party to the Civil Rights Movement. Have you heard of the Underground Railroad?" He said, "We would still have slavery." And then the judge said, "These guys are not criminals, they're freedom fighters. And I find them all not guilty on every charge." And then he said, and the judge says, "How can I get one of those T-shirts?" So we sent him one. We sent him one, right? you should pray that we keep getting that same judge every time, you know. But those laws recently resurfaced again. Now our city, those laws evolved, and they said, okay, you can feed 1 or 2 people, but you can't feed 4 or 5 people. They said the ordinance made it illegal to feed more than 5 people. Crazy, right? So we were ready, though. We had our T-shirts that said if Jesus had done the fish and loaves miracle in Philly, he would have gone to jail. And if you don't get that joke, just talk to me afterwards. We'll work it through. But, we were ready, and we testified in public hearings. And this is what was so beautiful. The church rose up. The people of faith talked about our love for Jesus and our love for those who are hurting. One of my sisters she's a Pentecostal woman. She stood up and she said, God told me to start making casseroles, homemade casseroles, and taking them down to the boulevard and sharing food with people. She said, I go every Tuesday. I never miss a Tuesday. For 15 years I've done it. And God told me to do it. If the mayor wants to stop me, then the mayor better talk to God. You don't mess with the Pentecostals, right? And then right after her, another brother, Catholic theologian, stood up. Incredible brother. He stood up and he said, when we feed the homeless, we don't believe we're feeding some pitiful, poor person. We believe it's sacramental, that we are feeding Jesus. And to say that we cannot feed the homeless is to say that we cannot feed Jesus. And it's a violation of our religious freedom. It actually went all the way, this is a nice take on the religious freedom, right? It went all the way to a federal court that ruled in our favor, saying to say you cannot feed the homeless is to say that you cannot feed Christ. And it is a violation of our faith, of our religious freedom. It ruled in our favor that we believe this is holy work, right?